Then I went on a round the world trip. I was a medical student and I just did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu everywhere I could. I think my very first class was in 1999 and I trained with Roger Gracie. I didn't really know who any of these people were. I got back to Belfast and then I was hooked on ground fighting, and then of course Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So that's really the journey I took from being a not very good karate person to somebody who became interested in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu back in the late 90s, you know.
Hello beautiful people, welcome back to KC Manthan, our very first Jiu-Jitsu vacation in Uttarakhand. We are here with Professor Waqar Ahmad on his third Jiu-Jitsu trip to Bharat. Prof.
That's India, is it?
That's India, the real India.
Yeah, the real India. Right.
Welcome home.
Nice.
How has it been for you, the India trip?
It's been great. It's been a really good time. I really appreciate you running this camp for us and letting me kind of just 5 days of just everything I possibly know. You know, to be honest, it's a real honor to be giving something back. Back home, I think most Indian people think of me as a coconut. Do you know what I mean? So, but my dad's Indian, my mum's Indian. My dad's from UP, my mum's from Bihar. And from the first time I trained, you know, with you, and I was coaching, you know, where you were at the time, it was a real big privilege to me to be giving something back to Bharat, you know.
Yeah.
And to award you with the black belt, that meant a great deal to me. So yeah, so big up you, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to kind of bring Jiu-Jitsu a little bit to India. Because I realise, you know, Jiu-Jitsu people can be a bit expensive, you know, sometimes, and to get knowledge, well, whatever knowledge I can bring, you know, for me it's a pleasure to spread Jiu-Jitsu to India because it's done so much for me, and if I can sort of, I've been lucky to watch your progress from purple belt to black belt, you know, and it's been a real privilege to do that and to give something back to you know my roots. It means a lot. It means a lot to me.
So this is our third time meeting.
Yeah.
And one thing that I want to share from my side is you never charge us anything.
I know. I'm a terrible businessman.
We need to fix it.
Yeah, I'm a terrible businessman.
You never charge anything, but you have always been so generous in sharing whatever you have.
Well, I think this comes from actually Jigoro Kano.
Yeah.
You know, not a jiu-jitsu guy, obviously he's the founder of judo, but Kano always talked about judo, and to me jiu-jitsu is kind of like a form of judo, right? But Kano always talked about judo as not being a commercial enterprise. It's an educational enterprise, you know. And to me, I learned so much about life and how to live my life from jiu-jitsu. So to come in and sort of throw, I mean, and you were working 17 jobs at the time to try and just
3,500.
just to try and make ends meet, you know. So to sort of help the spread of jiu-jitsu, you know, I don't really see how sort of like charging people an arm and a leg is really something that's going to help. You know, I'm a flipping doctor, you know what I mean? I can afford all the toppings on the pizza, you know, I'll be all right. You know?
So I'm booking you for everything.
There you go.
Can I have your American Express? I can talk to Charlotte about this. It's just 2 hours of chat only.
Platinum card.
But Prof, if we want to know about your martial arts journey, not just Jiu-Jitsu, because you have a lot of experience. I remember you telling us about your JKD experience, your Kali experience, Wing Chun. How did the journey start for you?
Well, I suppose I think I frame everything through. I mean, I've had a recent ADHD diagnosis, and it's kind of like, and when you have a diagnosis like this, you look back at your life and you kind of go, that explains it. That explains it. You know, and I was always a very you know, outward kind of person. I was always kind of very excited about stuff, and whenever I was a small child, I thought ninjas and karate and stuff looked cool, you know, because if you have ADHD, stuff like that looks interesting. So I started out doing karate when I was like 11 years old, and I was terrible at it. I was so bad because, again, maybe it's an ADHD thing, but if this stuff come my way, I'd be like, I know. But I stuck at it. I think that's some quality that I have is his perseverance. I stuck at it till I was a brown belt, but I still wasn't very good at it, you know. And then I did Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, which again, it looked really cool. I remember seeing a demonstration of Japanese Jiu-Jitsu from my teacher, later teacher Jim Canning, and it looked like WWF wrestling. You know, they're doing all these big throws and stuff. It looked so cool. And I did that till I got my black belt, although I still wasn't great at fighting, you know. But in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, they always did this sort of like ground fighting bit, which I really liked. And then really to get to Jiu-Jitsu, and my karate teacher, Ray Coleman, who's I'm very privileged to give him a black belt as well. But Ray and I became very interested in ground fighting, as it was called. And there was a guy called Jeff Thompson, who's very big in England, who could drop some names. And he released this like VHS set on ground fighting, you know, and really it was from a judo perspective, but it was more from a self-defense kind of perspective. And we became really fascinated with ground fighting. And then the UFC came out, and like we watched that eventually, and then Hoist, we watched him just destroying everybody. And I just started copying what he did in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and was just, you know, obviously that just worked because nobody knew what the mount position was. And then I went on a round the world trip as a medical student, and I just did Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu everywhere I could. I think my very first class was in 1999 at Hickson's Academy, and I trained with Roger Gracie. I didn't really know who any of these people were, you know. And then I got back to Belfast, and then I was hooked on ground fighting, and and then of course Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So that's really the journey I took from being a not very good karate person to somebody who became interested in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu back in the late 90s, you know.
Prof, you have attended a lot of seminars.
Yeah.
You have taken classes with a lot of legends.
Right.
Any moment, any special moment, or any lesson that you remember from that legend that was like a life-changing for you?
I remember the first time I saw Roger Gracie. I was like, oh my God. I even remember the very first Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu class, a very first actual Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu thing. It was actually the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu people in Northern Ireland, where I'm from, and they were trying to get Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They could see it was coming, and this was like 98 or 99, and they brought over Mauricio Gomes, and didn't know who he was, and a very, very young Roger Gracie, who was like 13 or 14. And my flatmate, I was in medical school, and we were watching the Jiu-Jitsu kind of, you know, VHS tapes, you know, from Roger Gracie, and we were, oh my God, we are at a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu seminar. And I even remember the techniques they showed. I even remember they did like a guillotine to sit down and then get on top of the mount, and then I remember watching Mauricio and Roger fighting. And again, I wasn't really sure who these people were, and they just put on this kind of display of stuff, and I was like, wow, that's just incredible. So the first seminar with Mauricio and Roger was obviously a big thing. Training with Saulo Ribeiro, I think I mentioned to you about Saulo. I didn't know who he was, but I remember, because I was quite into Jiu-Jitsu at this stage, I think I was still a white belt, and I just remember Saulo and Jandy Ribeiro. It was in Dublin for a seminar run by John Kavanagh. I remember Saulo and Jandy, and they wrestled everybody in the seminar twice. Now, nobody there was more than purple belt. I think Jandy was a purple belt, maybe like a world-class purple belt, and Saulo was Saulo. But I remember wrestling Saulo, and he just beat me without hurting me or doing any force or any strength. He just moved me to where he wanted to move me, submitted me like a game of chess, and I thought, flipping heck, that is the Jiu-Jitsu that I want to have. That's the Jiu-Jitsu I want to have, you know.
Prof, you've been a student, lifelong student of martial arts for Jiu-Jitsu, and you learn from everyone, irrespective of what rank or what position they hold. You learn from everyone, and you find out your ways of those lessons that are useful. But you're also officially a student of Master De La Riva.
Yeah.
Do you want to share something special moment when you first time met him?
Oh gosh.
How were the lessons?
I think The first time I trained with De La Riva, I was with Gracie Baja. It was one of the first times I went to Brazil, and I think it must have been 2005, I think maybe. And my student at the time, Kiva McGill, she was the first Irish or British world champion. She won a blue belt, but we were just going to every gym. We were going to every gym, and we were sort of trained at Carlson's. And then somebody said, go down to De La Riva's, and we trained. It was just a gym I kind of called into at the start, and I was with a different team, and there was some jagara, going on, and generally about money, and I was just like, ugh. And I remember going to De La Riva, and I would just go back to De La Riva. There was just something about De La Riva's place, and it was so weird because nobody there really spoke English. My Portuguese was muito mal. It was not good. Pouco. No, mal, bad. It was bad. And it was so weird because it was like everybody would just beat me. It was like a mat full of black belts.
Right.
And I was like a purple belt there, or purple belt I think it was. And just everybody, but I would just always drift back to his place. And there was just something, and then I remember, I think it was, and I mean, some people have sort of mentioned me, like De La Riva, as a fighter was never, there were other Carlson Gracie fighters who were just, more accomplished, more technical, all of this kind of stuff. But De La Riva as a mentor, I remember the very first time I was with this other team, and I was sort of a little bit unhappy, and I said to De La Riva, I talked to some friends about this, and I said, I'm going to ask Della. And I said, Professor, would you take me on as your student? And he just said, no problem. And I thought, it would be my honour. And I thought, what do you mean your honour? You're De La Riva. They named a guard after you. Everybody in the world knows what De La Riva guard is. And he said, it's my honour. And I said, what are you even talking about? And he said, man, there are 10 jiu-jitsu academies, 10 famous jiu-jitsu academies on this street. The street's called Nossa Senhoras on Rio de Janeiro. And he says, there's 10 famous academies on this street, and you choose me. That's why it's my honour. And just the life lessons, when I was going through kind of having my own, personal demons, De La Riva would just, he would always kind of just take me back to being normal. He always just kind of seemed interested in my welfare. He always wanted to see me do well, physically, mentally, emotionally. He always just seemed to know the right thing to say at the right time to make my life better. And his jiu-jitsu was just, I've had a bunch of private classes and absolutely mind-bending jiu-jitsu knowledge, But I think between that and just the mentorship he gave me, I think that meant a lot to me, and that's why I've stuck with De La Riva, over the years. Even though I don't barely see him anymore. I haven't been back to Brazil since 2019, but still, I still wear his badge, and I still pay his subscription. So,
Prof, imagine a world. Like imagine next year world.
Right.
2026. You. Master De La Riva, Casey Manthan, another Jiu-Jitsu retreat, us, and your American Express. How do you see that?
That sounds expensive.
Okay. But fun.
But fun.
100 out of 100 say, let's sign up.
Let's do it. Let's make it happen. No, Della's he's a very generous coach. He's a very generous coach. And his jiu-jitsu is just, I think you'd really love his jiu-jitsu if you saw. He did a seminar in Belfast in the De La Riva guard, and it was like watching a man walk on water. It was so good. And there's so much stuff I've shown you a bunch of stuff from it already, but it was so good.
That triangle entry was insane.
So good.
I stopped everything. Like, I want to see what's happening here. Let's get along.
No, it's very.
Take my American Express that I don't have.
But as a guy, as a mentor and a coach, he's given me a lot of time. He's given me a lot of time, and if other people maybe didn't, so that meant a lot to me.
Prof, currently you are teaching at Queen's University.
That's right.
Right. Yeah. How is learning or teaching over there?
It's fine. It's good. I suppose I started with Kiva. We started the club together, kind of because we were kicked out of Gracie Baja, like most good people, But we started the team. We started it together. really mostly because we were really quite competitive at the time, because I think I was in my 20s and Kiva was too, and she was a really good fighter, and we just wanted a bunch of training partners, and it was just kind of like, okay, we should probably like make ourselves a society, and now we should make ourselves a team. And Kiva, you know, she's had kids and stuff, so she sort of slipped away from jiu-jitsu a little bit. She doesn't really train anymore, but in jiu-jitsu, she's still an incredible athlete in whatever she does. But I suppose, so I've kept it going. You know, I've kept it going. To me, it's I suppose, I mean, and especially now, you know, after the black belt, you know, every class, you know, you really reflect a lot more on what you do, and you become you're not so much interested in, like, for example, you know, the worm guard or the K guard or what have you. You're just kind of interested in what was the little thing that made that work. You become very interested in kind of the mechanics and self-improvement and getting better at the thing that you were doing. So Queen's, I mean, I suppose the downside of a university club is people don't usually stay in university for more than 3 years.
Right.
Sometimes if they're doing like a PhD, they may be there for 6 or 7 years. So I don't usually make anybody too much past purple belt. Right. And then they usually kind of go off to back to their shires where they come from, and, you know, get on with their lives. I mean, I have 4 black belts from some of my more regular training partners, but the ones who live in the same city, really, and then Ray, and then William Zinho, who's been a long time training partner of mine. But generally, I mean, I suppose the downside is you're training with new people. You're training with new people, and and you're sort of trying to train them and kind of guide them through jiu-jitsu within the prism of being a student. Right. So it is, and they're all very young people, so they kind of beat me up physically as well. So I've had to develop a game of kind of resilience rather than trying to beat up a bunch of 18-year-olds, you know. It sounds like fun, but, you know.
Nah, no fun. But Prof, since 2019, the phone calls that we share, your guidance have been very helpful. This is usually while you are traveling or I am traveling. We're discussing position while driving. It's not recommended. I don't know the rules over there, but definitely not
Put
here.
your right leg here, put your left foot on his head.
I have tried multiple times. The other time I was on the roof of the car. I don't know whose car.
It's just,
but one thing that you said that stuck to me was, don't be interesting, but be interested.
Yeah.
What was that?
So that came from improv. I think the place that was really popularized is there's a book that nobody likes the title of by Dale Carnegie called How to Win Friends and Influence People, and it sounds like a book on how to manipulate people. Right. But actually, one of my comedy mentors made me read it. You know, he made me read it. But it was actually be more interested than interesting. So that was actually taught to me by a mentor of mine. So, you know, I do a bit of stand-up comedy and improvisation. So it was a comedy mentor actually said, be more interested than interesting. Yeah. Do you know? And I think that's just useful advice in life.
I agree.
Really, do you know? I think if you're interested, you know, your eyes are open, and you know you can build the story of what you see. You know, if you're just kind of showing off and all this kind of stuff, and I get why anybody would want to do that. I get, you know, it's nice to feel important, but if you want to kind of build something, you know, you have to. I think anyway, if you want to build something, you know, you need to pay attention to what's going on, and you can add your little bit of what you can bring to whatever you're taking in, whatever you're seeing, whatever you're listening to. You know, so if you're interested, you know, it can be problematic as well, though. Sometimes, especially with my ADHD, I can be too interested in too many things, and I can lose focus, you know, and I can get lost a little bit. But I think broadly speaking, one of the biggest compliments I get as a doctor is that they call me the doctor who listens, and I'm like, aren't we all supposed to do that? You know, is that to me that just seems like. But actually, I was a terrible doctor before I started doing comedy, and I think comedy. A lot of people think of comedy as just saying a bunch of funny stuff and just really impressing people. But I think actually, and I think I've done a fair bit of study in that area, and it applies to jiu-jitsu as well. You know, I think comedy is really about paying attention to what's going on and then bringing your little bit of spin on it. And in life, you know, being interested in people and being, you know, seeing people where they're, you can see people where they're at, you know, whereas people, as if you're being interesting, you're just trying to sell yourself. I think that's probably takes up a lot of energy, I reckon, you know.
For the last trip that happened 2 years ago, you did one improv here. In Delhi or Udaipur?
I did stand up. So yeah, that's funny. So the first time I did stand up in India, because I think like I was doing stand up for about 8 years at that time, and I think like I usually do okay at least when I do stand up back home. You know, usually I do okay. Most of the time I do quite well, but I rarely do badly. And I landed in Delhi the other night, and I just got a meh kind of audience were like, what is this? And I got quite a big billing, you know, and people were like, well. And then I went to Mumbai and I did a bunch of gigs there, and you know, it was like I was a white belt. You know?
You should have invited us.
Well, you know,
so we just need to start something.
Well, but I learned a lot, because then I got a producer who still work with, Amit Kuva from Gujarat. So he mentored me, and there's a lot of stuff here. Like he just said, look, man, you know, you have the face of us, and you have the face of us, and the voice of the colonizers, and you don't apologize for that even once. Do you know what I mean? And you talk about stuff like Northern Ireland and the 1,400 people got killed in Northern Ireland. And he's like, dude, the British did that to us like every 20 minutes. Do you know? He was just like, we don't care.
Without a break.
And he said, well, why? He said, what is Ireland? Nobody knows what Ireland is in India. That's like us talking. That's like Indian people talking about a small island off Madagascar or something like that, you know. So he taught me a lot about kind of speak, but I learned some valuable lessons about speaking and using metaphor, you know, to become more relatable. And I think that comes up in training as well. Do you know?
Gulab jamun.
Well,
Burfi.
A good example is, you know, when we're doing the overhead sweep.
Yeah.
You put a hat on your head. You know, put the topi on your head.
Kooda bahar nikalo.
You know, so this kind of metaphor kind of training. Right. You know, that's a good example of a metaphor sort of thing. You know. Or keeping your bum off the ground as well. We've had various metaphors for that. Let's not talk about that on the podcast. But but these things. But I think whenever you can kind of speak with humor and metaphor, I think it speaks to part of the brain when you're coaching, as well. You know, I think it can help you. I think it can help you. Yeah. So I think combine. I think my ADHD brain kind of finds all these different sorts of things and kind of pushes them into a fairly unique thing, so for what that's worth, you know.
But Prof, now when we have mentioned about Ahmedabad, there is a D.I.Y Professor over there.
Is that right?
Yeah. Can we just quickly, for 5 seconds, go over that? The D.I.Y Prof.
The D.I.Y. Well,
let's not name him. Let's keep it anonymous.
Well, I'll keep it anonymous. But you know what? He got his brown belt, and you know that thing when somebody just gets a belt and then you fight them.
I think I can relate.
You fight with them like a week before, and you're like, oh, is this garbage? And then the next day you fight, and then you give him a brown belt, and then that very day he's just like, I will kill you. So yeah, he's a proper professor to me, and it's that great term. I think I said to you whenever you got your black belt. I think I got this off. He said good leaders don't create followers, they create leaders. You know, so he runs an academy in Gujarat. You know, he's a professor to me. You know, professor is just Portuguese for teacher. You know, it's just a word. You know, so I find it kind of funny that everybody calls me professor, because in my gym, if somebody called me professor, I'd be like, what's wrong with you? You know, but I think to give people, but you know, but I think that's a testament to you, because I think a lot of people are very precious about where their students train. They say, oh, don't train here, don't train there, and don't start your own thing up, and don't do this. But I think that idea that good leaders don't look to create followers; they look to create leaders. You know, and I think that's So I think the D.I.Y Professor is
Professor.
professor enough for me.
Let him stay at this rank for some
Okay,
time.
for a little while.
Let him work.
Keep him in his place.
Yeah. Otherwise, it'd be tough to handle him.
Yeah,
Too much command.
Jiu-Jitsu is fabulous.
Yeah. What guard would he like to play?
Flip. Open. Like his relationship status. Is that what you mean?
Prof, coming to instructionals.
Right.
I know you have watched 84 lakh instructionals.
Right.
Which one would you like to recommend for somebody who is starting now, who's listening to their professors very well, but maybe from blue belt onwards?
The one set that nobody ever thinks about is one of the first sets that ever came out. It's probably really hard to find, actually, these days. But there was a set by this guy called Mauricio Gomes, and it was so good. He started off by doing an MMA set, and I'm not that interested in MMA. And it's funny because it came out, it was like the first real Jiu-Jitsu set that came out was really Horion and Hoist did a set. And it was good, and actually when you go back and watch it, you realise how good it is. And then there was a set that came out from Henzo and Craig Kukak, which was kind of like that's a big catalogue of moves, And then there was one that came out with a guy called Pedro Carvalho, who I think was a very, very famous guy. But then Mauricio Gomes came out with a set, the Master Series. And the thing that made it different was that he was a serious competitor, like in MMA, Jiu-Jitsu, and no gi. And he would sort of say, I didn't really think about it at the time because when it came out, we didn't really have big Jiu-Jitsu competitions. Right. But when I watch it, a lot of the stuff I showed at the workshop at this here it was stuff from Mauricio Gomes, and everything in it was something that he said, look, this works on the mat with black belts, and this works in competition. So Mauricio Gomes is very underrated. The new Jiu-Jitsu sometimes I have a hard time keeping up with, like the Michael Galvaos and all these kinds of people. Is that even a name? I don't know if I've mixed two. If I mixed up two names. So I suppose, John Danaher I can watch all day long, but there's a lot of stuff. His stuff, I suppose it depends on what you like. I think at the end of the day, it depends if it can come into your game. Like I really enjoyed watching Craig Jones instructionals, but I struggle to make any of it work for me, for whatever reason. He did a set on kind of wrestling type pins and stuff like this. And maybe I just, I tried working with it and maybe it's just my body type or whatever. There are some stuff he has showed, like the just standing up stuff I was showing you a lot today. But on the whole, I'm just using this as an example. Right. Just sometimes you just cannot, maybe it's just his body type or whatever, you just can't make it work. Saulo Ribeiro, his stuff, again, this is very old stuff. His stuff was very good. The newer stuff that I've seen, I think Lachlan Gillies is very good. His stuff is very good. Marcelo Garcia's newer DVDs on BJJ Fanatics, I think, are pretty good. I'm a complete deep half guard queen. Yeah. I'm a deep half guard queen. So Jeff Glover, if you like that game, Jeff Glover has a very good set out and everything on it. It works for me, and Bernardo Farias. If you like that game, and I do like that game because I'm a big fat old man, Bernardo Faria, his stuff is very good too. I'm really enjoying Chris Burns' material as well. Henry Aikens, we both have a common love of. Henry Aikens' material, again, I've found I can make it work for me. A lot. Some of the stuff I can't seem to make work for me, but I think it depends on who you are and what style of person.
Right.
But oh my God, I spend so much money on jiu-jitsu instructionals. My wife will be really cross if she hears.
We'll edit this part.
We'll edit this part. I've every website every website you can think of. I probably subscribe to it.
You're the Hall of Fame member on every website.
Yeah, the gold student,
The gold card,
gold card student. So I guess it depends. It depends what you really want. I'm really taken with there's a guy called Wim Dupetter.
Right.
I think I was showing you some of his stuff. I remember first seeing him and thinking, gosh, I was watching an instructional of his on YouTube. And it was on kind of the mirror principle, and I was like, I just cannot listen to it. I cannot understand what this guy's talking about. And then myself and one of my black belts, Glenn, were just sitting down in his gym with the instructional on, just working through the stuff and going, son of a, this actually really, really works. And sometimes it actually takes, but he speaks so fast. I'm pretty sure he has ADHD too. The thing I really like about him, he has had like something like 300 fights or something like that, or 600, I can't remember. But there's a lot of fights and he has them all recorded. I think he's 18-4 in MMA. And he really, there's a lot of wisdom in whenever you've had that many fights, you've got a lot of wisdom about fighting, and he seems very sincere. So, but he speaks really quickly, and a lot of his ideas are really counterintuitive. You sort of think I've never seen this, but there's a lot of stuff you're like, I've never seen this before. I think a lot of the stuff I talked to you about that kind of dynamic tension, about kind of squeezing your ass and squeezing your abs and making yourself strong. Moving. And you hear the Gracies talk about this too, but when you've got a guy who's actually had that many fights documented and recorded, and then you actually try it out and you think, gosh, I'm not getting hurt as much. I think there's a lot to be said for Wim Dupetter, Wimduppeter. He's a Belgian.
BJJ Globetrotters.
He's big part of that. He's a Philippe Costa black belt as well, which is nothing to kind of belittle. That's a big deal to be a Philippe Costa black belt. Like Ryan Hall would be another Philippe Costa black belt. So he's a very, very good fighter. And I think if you can kind of deal with the quick talking, I think there's some even his free stuff on YouTube, I think is incredible. Really, really good.
But Prof, talking about the competition scenario in Ireland or Belfast, you have organized a couple of tournaments.
I tried to run a jiu-jitsu.
What was the idea behind it?
Well, I ran a kind of low-cost competition, so I think it was like £20 or something like that. Well, the idea behind it was when I used to compete as a blue belt or a white belt, I would fly to Birmingham or London, have 1 or 2 fights, lose, get on the plane and fly home. That was it. Stay in a hotel. So you had to pay for a flight and a hotel. A competition costs something got a lot of money. Do you know what I mean? And I remember going to the 3rd or 4th round in a competition. I had to fly home. Because the competition went on all night long. The competitions tend to have an awful lot of children in them because, well, okay, fair enough. It's great to have children to compete and have their little Cobra Kai thing going on. But you'd be standing around all day, and they're just big money making enterprises. I thought a lot of the time. So I thought of creating this jiu-jitsu league as a kind of affordable competition. Northern Ireland's not a big place. A competition that you could come, you could train, you could come in, you could fight. We try and get fighters as many fights or as few fights as they want. Try and get them as much fight experience. I don't think you have to compete in jiu-jitsu, but I think it does give you an awful lot more perspective. So the intention behind the jiu-jitsu league was to create a competition for adults, that they can get plenty of fights, and really it was the competition I wanted to be able to fight in whenever I was a white belt, blue belt, purple belt. That was local and affordable. But we've had a little break because competitions are expensive to run, and sometimes if a few of them don't make too much money, the wife gets angry, so I have to. It was fine before I had that stupid child of mine, but have to pay for university or whatever. She better go to medical school,
She can choose anything till the time it's
as long as it's medicine.
medicine.
Yeah, as long as it's medicine.
But Prof, husband, father, doctor, stand-up comedian, martial artist, professor.
Well, okay. I'm sorry. I just respect myself.
Friends. And how do you manage everything?
Oh, badly. Well, I think, I think since I got my diagnosis, it's got me, it's helped me get a bit more perspective. But I think a lot of kind of how I manage things is to steal the motto of Bill and Ted. Is just be excellent to each other. If you're good to people, if you are genuinely good to people and have good intentions, people will look after you. People will help you. Do you know? Like with my weight loss business and my private medical business, there was a friend of mine who was he was a well-to-do guy. Shout out to Gareth Dundee, and he was watching me just do all this work for free, and he was just like, "Look, will you just let me handle your business I'll take 10%, but just don't talk about money anymore." But when you're good to people, when you're decent to people, I think people will be decent to you and people will look after you, you know. And I think there's a lot of currency in you talk about kindness over toughness.
Business over kindness over toughness.
Well, maybe. But I think if you show kindness, if you show a regard for your community, if you give, I hate this term, if you give value. I hate the term, you're not valuing yourself. Shut up. What are you talking about? Do you know what I mean? But I think if you're kind to people, people will tend to look after you. You know, I think that helps me to kind of keep above the ground. Do you know?
First Jiu-Jitsu visit 2019.
Right.
Second 23. Third 25.
Okay.
So 4 years gap, 2 years gap.
Okay.
1 year gap.
Okay. Maybe.
If the message is delivered.
Yeah, no, look, man, and this is the thing, and it's part of being a coach, and it's kind of a hard part of being a coach. Like, when I give somebody a purple belt, I kind of, especially in a university setting, I kind of know he's about to go. Do you know what I mean? And they say, I'm going to start my own thing, and then I'll come back. And they rarely do, And sometimes I think some teachers, they take this as being kind of, treachery. Oh, I did this much for him. I taught him everything for nothing. I did this much to him. But they have to go out and do their own thing, and I've given you the black belt, because you are more than capable, you remind me of De La Riva, and that is as big a compliment as I could give any human. You remind me the way you are with your students, the way your jiu-jitsu is. I don't know how much you need me anymore. I mean, I'm always on the phone. But my expectation is not that you're going to get me over every 6 months to learn a new thing, because as like I said, good leaders create leaders, not followers. It's nice that you brought me here. I absolutely loved it. You know what I mean, and all this stuff. But you need to grow. You need to, and I'll happily come back here. I would love to be handing out black belts for this crowd of brown belts whenever they're ready to go. Absolutely, I would love to. But there is that thing, and I think, and it is about leadership and understanding. You won't need me as much anymore. I don't know if you needed me that much before. I think sometimes it was emotional support whenever you were going through a thing or whatever. I don't want to get into specifics and stuff. Or sometimes it was a bad thing going on. You're like, what am I doing about this? And I just Aram Sikar, as they say in this neck of the woods. So I'll happily come back here anytime. I'll happily come back here and be spoiled by you guys with the gulab jamun and all of that kind of stuff. There it is. But there's an understanding on my part. I'm 48. I'm 48. I'm so old I don't even remember.
Let's not discuss it. We have 20 years.
Well, 20 years. But
16 and 20.
Yeah. But you're in a place that you're growing in jiu-jitsu. I don't know. I'm like, as good as I was when I was 28, you know what I mean? No, I wasn't. No, I'm not. I mean, come on, be honest. Do you know what I mean? I think I've got a lot of knowledge. Do you know, I've got a lot of experience, and I think that's something I can pass on. But flipping heck, 5 days I've taught you guys almost everything I know. Do you know? So like, I would happily come back for camps and stuff like this. But I understand. I understand. There's, you know, people need to grow. You know, people need to grow. But I would love to come back here. You know, and for me actually, I mean, most of my family in India aren't, well, most of my family who I know in India, who I grew up with in India, a lot of them have moved to the UK. A lot of my grandparents aren't alive anymore. You know, my aunts and uncles are kind of passed away. So Jiu-Jitsu really is the thing that I have in India now. Do you know? Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the first trip, and I feel a bit guilty about this. But I think this really to do with kind of, you know, time I have to spend doing work as a doctor. But this is the first trip I've come to India where I'm not visiting any relatives, because I've only got one relative in Mumbai who I probably would visit anyway. Do you know? So Jiu-Jitsu is the thing that keeps me. It's the thing I have in India. Do you know? My stand-up comedy didn't really appreciate. Well, it was better the second time after.
White belt first stripe.
Belfast.
Perfect.
So, but jiu-jitsu it's my main connection to India now. Yeah. You know, so to me, you know, it's a pleasure to come back here. And as I said, you know, I feel I hope I've been something of a mentor to you. You know, I mean, I've showed you a bunch of moves, but I mean, I'm very like De La Riva. I mean, like De La Riva showed me a bunch of things. Most of what De La Riva showed me is how terrible I am at jiu-jitsu. You know, whenever he's just watching me do something, he's just like, man, you grab like this, you just grab like this. You know, yeah. You know. But I think most of what I've learned from De La Riva is how to carry myself as a person, and how and just that there's a guy looking out for me and said, you know what, you're all right at this stuff. You know what I mean? You keep doing this. You know, stop partying so much. Stop eating so much shit, and you know, stop running about with crazy people. You know, and giving you that kind of. So I think giving you that kind of nod and giving you that. I mean, even people talk. I mean, people say, oh, why do you stay with De La Riva? You know, you hardly see him. You never talk to him. Do you know? But having that foundation, having that support, having that structure behind you, you know, it's not even a credit. It is. I think it is emotional support. It is friendship. It is family. You know, it is all of those sorts of kind of cruddy things people talk about. But I think having that, that's because you could bring Roger Gracie over here. You could bring Fabio Gurgel. You could bring some of the best coaches ever, but you know, we know each other, we have a relationship. So I think, you know, I've given you that. You know, I think that's what I'm sure. Like, I've shown you a few cool moves. You go, oh, Prof, you know, I learned this from you. I'm like, come on, you know, you've developed all this from years and years of training professionally. You know, you've learned most of the stuff. You know, you figured out yourself. You know, even if you watch it in an instructional, it comes down to you getting on the mat and figuring it out yourself. You know, whether I showed you it or you saw it on, like I said, on, you know, BJJ Fanatics or whatever, you figure it out yourself. But I think that kind of mentorship, that kind of, you know, kudos for the people who supported you whenever you needed to be supported. I think that's valuable. And for me, coming back to India, you know, that's, you know, to me, coming back to India, Jiu-Jitsu is a big part of that. You know, and that's I feel blessed. Hate words like that, but I do feel blessed that, you know, I feel I've given some jiu-jitsu. Even my friend in Udaipur, do you know what I mean? He was a guy. I went down to an MMA gym and I trained there, and you know, MMA people. You know, not MMA. What did he do? Kudo. And you know, he was all very excited about stuff, and I rolled with him, and I said, man, I'm going to give you a blue belt. And he was just like, well, how much do you want for it? And I went, nothing, just fucking take the blue belt. You know what I mean? He said, just take the blue belt. Why? Well, how much should I pay? I said, no, just do jiu-jitsu. Do jiu-jitsu. And I gave him the site, the passwords to all my website that I subscribed to. I said, well, what do I do? And I just said, just do jiu-jitsu. Just. And he was so excited about it, walking around with the blue belt around Udaipur, you know. But but to spread that kind of support and to spread the sport and the martial art that way, in a way Kano would have. That's what I would aspire to. Does that make sense?
You're actually one of those rare teachers who, you know, will be standing next to you in case of any trouble, any mistake, any failure. But at the same time, you also give freedom, at least to me, wherein you let me figure things out by myself. When you have such a support, then you can go out fearlessly, know that somebody is at your back, but not on your head.
Right.
So this is something that I'm very grateful for.
Well, there's a terrific book I read, a patient kind of recommended. It's called The Culture Code. And it talks about what is a successful culture. So I think a strong culture has, what's this term? Psychological safety. You know, I suppose physical safety too. But psychological safety is that if you do something which is kind of just not great in some way, something wrong, as it were, something out of place, you know that that I'm on yours. I mean, unless you've really crossed a big line, but you know that you are okay where you are. You know, psychological safety is one thing, the first thing. That you know, if you ring me up and some shit's gone down, you know I'm not going to go Binish you prick. You know what I mean? You know when you have psychological safety, this is your team, this is your whatever trade team or tribe or whatever it is, you know I'm in your corner. You know that these are the people who are going to help you out. You know you're not going to be kicked out for saying something dumb. You know, we might go, oh, I don't say stuff like that. But you have that support. The second part of a strong culture, apart from psychological safety, is freedom to make mistakes. And that comes from psychological safety. Freedom to do your own thing. And I think you can only have freedom to do your own thing when you have psychological safety, according to this book. And I think this is very honest. And the last thing, which a lot of people would say would be the first thing, but I don't think it's necessarily the first thing, is a sense of purpose. You know, knowing where you actually want to go to. You're never going to get anywhere unless you know where you're going. All right, but I think you're going to know where you're going better if you've got people who are supporting you, who you trust. If you've got this crew, this team, what have you, and that your team will support you to make mistakes and learn. Right. Do you know? And then you can say, oh, do you know what? We're going to fight in the Japan, Japan Open or the Mundials or the European or what have you. But to have that psychological safety, to have that freedom to learn. I remember one of my first coaches, he was like, just do this. This is the way you go. And I remember another black belt was watching me and he was just like, off the mat, you're like this happy-go-lucky guy. And on the mat, you're like, yeah, crush. And he goes, what am I seeing wrong here? So this doesn't make sense to me. There was John Frankel. He's a SPG guy, a very wise guy, a very good jiu-jitsu. And he said, what is this that you're on the mat and you're smashing people's face? That's what my teacher used to be like, and he was just very much smash, crush, give the guy nothing, And off the mat, I was just shooting the shit and just being funny. I said, why is the guy on the mat and the guy off the mat a different guy? Why don't you just enjoy your jiu-jitsu the way you want to do it? And I thought, and I remember there was a guy, he's much better than me now, but he and I back then were kind of just toe-to-toe. I'll not mention his name, but we were both blue belts. And he and I were just about the same. And then I just when John Frankel said this to me, so this was an important moment actually in my jiu-jitsu, he just said, just you do you. Just you do you. And instead of smashing down, I just sat back, did a little knee on belly, danced around. And this kid, he couldn't touch me for years. This guy, who was always about neck and neck. But whenever I had the freedom to just do my jiu-jitsu, whatever I thought, because I was watching all these instructionals, but when I was on the mat, I was like, yeah, And the same with you, man. You dance on the mat. It's wonderful to watch. do your neon belly. That's cute, you know. It's just
Cute.
yeah. So whenever you have the freedom to be yourself, I think there's an awful lot to be said. I think in my practice of medicine, I like to give people the freedom to be themselves. And I think whenever you give people the freedom to be themselves, you know, it's just better. How is it not better? You know what I mean? Sometimes if they're going really off piece, you go, oh, don't do that, you're gonna hurt yourself. You know, but I think largely speaking, you know, I think allowing people to be themselves is good leadership. You know, I think it's some people call it laissez-faire leadership. I don't know if that's necessarily what I do with you, but I mean, but I do think, you know, I mean, I wouldn't have sort of taken you on. Well, maybe I would have, but I wouldn't have sort of mentored you, as it were, if I didn't think you were, and I wouldn't have sort of given you the black belt if I didn't think you were capable of running with it. Do you know? I wouldn't give you the black belt if I didn't think you were capable of making more black belts. You know, so and you do that by not saying you do Binish's game, you do, you know, this crazy dancey shit that you do, right? I mean, and that's wonderful, but I mean, you know, and I saw when you were teaching my medical colleague, he was saying, Binish said play deep half guard, and I thought that makes so much sense, you know, because you're a big dude, a bit older, you know, and you know you've got a lot of knee injuries and stuff like this, so I mean, while you guided him, you know, he found that himself. Yeah. He found that himself. So thanks for the compliment. Sorry for all the words. I use a lot of words.
That is now the clear description of what had happened.
Well, there you go.
Prof, one message to a guy who's been ignoring our messages. Karan calls.
Huh?
Karan calls.
Oh, Karan.
Yeah. Who didn't respond to you? Who didn't respond to me?
He didn't respond to my WhatsApp.
Yeah. So one message to him.
Man, you know,
gain weight. Lose hair.
Mate, look, he's a good example of it, and this is where you have to just let people figure themselves out, you know, because Karan is, man, I remember when I was hanging out with Karan, he was just driving me back and forth to your gym, and he was such a cool, breezy guy. He was, no, but he really was, and I was talking to him about theatre and comedy and all this stuff, and he was just, he and I were just so simpatico, you know, and he was playing cool music and stuff like that. Like a lot of people in your gym, and he's, you know, and I suppose he's like, get back on the mat, motherfucker. You know, you could be, oh, get back on the mat because jiu-jitsu is life. Nah, man, he's in a place. But I was at this place too. I remember when I was doing my professional exams, I had to stop doing jiu-jitsu for a while, you know, and you know, he's at that place. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And I think Karan loves jiu-jitsu so much. I believe he'll find it again. I hope you do, man. But you got to do what you got to do, and I guess that's what it comes down to. You got to do what's right for yourself. And there's a great phrase an improvisation teacher taught me, and it's, even though he was always shouting at me for being shit at improv, but he always said, everything you do is correct. You know, everything you do is correct. You know, it might make you land on your face, but that's what you're supposed to be doing right now. You know?
Correct way of falling to your face.
Or maybe not the right way of falling to your face, but it's what you need to be doing right now. Yeah. You are exactly where you need to be. And Karan, from what you were talking about, you know, he's doing the law, he's figuring out this stuff. Maybe that's what his thing is. Maybe he'll do something else. But everything you do is correct. Everything you do is correct. So don't be second guessing because of what somebody else might be saying or what other people think. You know, what you're doing right now, this is correct for you. So I hope I see Karan on the mats again. But I know whatever he's doing, it's going to be great. You know, because he's such a great guy. You know, and everybody in your gym is really cool. You know, and I think
they're all different Karans. Karan with hair, Karan with no hair, lighter Karan, heavy Karan.
Well, this is it.
Leg lock Karan.
But you know, but I think you see this observation. I do observe this. So I think a gym tends to be like a hologram of its teacher. Because, you know, like somebody comes to my gym, some guy with tattoos on his neck and all this kind of stuff on his face, and comes into my gym and kicks the shit out of everybody and he likes everybody. And like everybody just looks at him like, oh. I think he doesn't fit. He doesn't fit. Do you know what I mean? He just doesn't fit. He neck cranks people. And then we put him with the enforcer and the enforcer kicks the crap out of him. But you can tell, you know, the guy he comes twice and he's just like, I don't like these guys. Do you know, these guys are idiots. You know, my guys are generally quite like me. They're just they joke. They like somebody actually, a guy from another team. He was training with us for a while, and then he moved away, and then he trained in another really successful competitive gym. And he came back and he said, "This is the gym where people laugh all the time." You know, and I thought, I'll take that. But I think the gym, and you know, if somebody leaves your gym, I don't think you should say it's kind of because I was a bad teacher. I think it's because you weren't the right teacher for them. Do you know what I'm saying?
I agree.
You know, if you get these sort of meatheads and they all meet up with their tattoo on their face and their, you know, swastika convention or whatever
we
it is.
have this culture only wherein I'm very much clear. You'll soon figure it out whether you're going to stay here or not.
Yeah.
And it's better that you leave.
Right.
Because you're going to be fair to yourself, not to us.
Well,
you need to fulfill your purpose, your way of doing things.
And that's fine. That's fine. You will find your tribe. You will find your tribe. And I think that's where, when you create leaders, your leaders will be like a little different. And they may create tribes too. Yeah. But, you know, I think that, you know, everybody in your gym is super friendly. They're super accommodating. You know, you know, they want to learn. They have this sort of mindset. You know, they're not kind of like break the guard open kind of people, like these sorts of people. They're not, you know, trying to win at any cost. And that I think is a reflection of, you know, as a hologram nearly of the teacher. You know, I don't want that to sound too guru-ish. I don't want that to sound too guru-ish. But you know, when you have your tribe, when you have your people around you, do you know what I mean? It's like I teach in this like I have the breakfast club. I stole this idea from Roger Gracie Jr. Do you know what I mean? He called it the breakfast club. So our breakfast club, you know, it's the same bunch of dudes. You know, the big class is like 50. You know, the nighttime class, but the breakfast club is the same bunch of guys, and we just come in, side control, mount, back position, guard retention, takedowns. All right, see you tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? Same thing. And we just have the same sense of humor. We laugh at the same stuff. We vaguely have the same politics, you know, and it's fine. And we all kind of just whatever, do you know, and that's the tribe, I think, you know. And I think but your tribe is wonderful. You know, there's no tough guy bullshit really in yours, which maybe there should be, but you know, there's plenty of places that they do that, I think. You know, whatever, you know. let's not listen to that.
You're gonna meet.
No, he's not talking.
Prof, you trusted us, not just me. You trusted us with this responsibility. We are very grateful for this, and I hope your roots or your connection to Bharat Jiu-Jitsu keeps growing stronger. And the visit next year with your American Express. And gulab jamun from us.
Yeah, so this is even.
From us.
Even.
And burfi as a topping.
Okay, burfi and gulab jamun.
We can check on it and...
Sounds good, man.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
Thank you, bro.
Thanks, man. Sorry, Mum. Slap looking.